In this video, I'm doing a mudroom makeover. If you want to see how I go from this to this, stick around and see how I did it. If you found this video helpful and you want to see more like it, please take a moment to subscribe or even leave me a comment. I think we all have some under or poorly utilized space under our stairs. And I lucked out in that I get these cabinets for free. And I think they're going to fit perfectly right there under the stairs. One facing the bench and then one facing me where I'm standing here. So I'm going to do a little test fit. We're going to see how that goes. And then I'll decide if I can just cut a hole in the wall here and slide one of these in. All right, so now I am extremely happy. So I slid that one into approximately where it can fit, all the way against the bottom of the stairs. And I have over the depth of this cabinet here. So this one is 29. I've got 29 and a half. So I think I can put this not on the floor so I don't have to cut the sill plate here. Sill plate, I think that's right. But I don't have to cut that. I'm just gonna put a box under where that's gonna go. I can slide it in from the front. It'll be off the floor a little bit. And this still has plenty of room to fit right there. I love it when you find something and it fits perfectly. Now I'm just going to label each drawer really quickly. That way when I take them out, I can get them back where they belong. Getting these drawers out made the cabinet much easier to move around. A couple of the drawers needed a little TLC. I just had to tap the drawer bottoms back into place. I also took this opportunity to remove the drawer handles so everything would be easier to prep to paint. The top trim on both cabinets was broken, and since it was glued and screwed into place, I used my oscillating tool to cut it down to size. And then I just briefly hit it with the sander to clean it up. After double checking the position of the cabinet, I marked the drywall for where the hole needed to be cut. Time to get the oscillating tool back out, which made light work of cutting the drywall. I was very pleased to see that the oscillating tool was short enough to get between the studs, so I could cut these down and make room to frame out the opening. I pre-measured and started the screws going into this header, which made installing it very quick. And instead of trying to toe screw or toe nail the studs going on either side of the opening, I used my pocket hole jig. With the opening reframed on this side, I resecured the drywall to the new studs. And now, with the framed opening as a guide, I use the oscillating tool again to finish cutting the opening. And now, since I thought it was going to be easier to not cut the sill plate, I just made a simple frame to rest the entire cabinet on. Once again, I used pocket screws to hold the assembly together. Now this piece I really struggled with. What I should have done is left myself more clearance to put the cabinet in and then put some shims in place. So if you're going to do a similar project, I would definitely recommend making your opening slightly oversized, and then you can put your cabinet in with shims. And then trim is going to go around it, so you have an opportunity to hide those shims. It went, but it could have gone a lot smoother. Time to speed through the rest of this struggling. With a little persuasive fine-tuning, I got it flush with the wall. Then, a quick test fit of the drawers. I just finished cutting these two pieces on the floor to raise the other cabinet up to match the height of the one I just installed. And what I realized is I didn't like how much space I was going to be wasting behind here. I could still put some storage bins for Halloween decorations or Christmas decorations, that kind of stuff. So this one here, I'm going to change my plan. I'm going to put on casters. It's going to make it a slightly different height, but I'm okay with that. So time to quickly repurpose those 2x4s and then mark for some casters and drill the holes and then install some hardware.
Once the frame was together, I put it in the bottom of the cabinet and screwed it through the sides.
How's all my little helpers? What you get on you? What do you have on you? What's all my little helpers doing? Oh, you sleepy puppies? You sleeping? Hi, Luna. Hi, Lulu. Yeah, there's so many good little helpers. So casters was definitely the right call. I can utilize that space next to and behind the fixed cabinet. And then this one holds in really well. Stops dead where it's supposed to. And yeah, great use of the space.
Time to work on some finishing touches on the other cabinet. I'm starting off by using a little drywall compound to clean up the area around the cabinet, plus some light sanding to just finish it up. I got some matching door casing to trim out the cabinet with. That way it'll match some other areas in the basement. And because I don't have a miter saw yet, I opted to use my table saw to do all the cutting. And there was a lot of fine tuning. It took quite a while to dial this in exactly the way I wanted it. And since everything's getting painted, I opted to caulk the joints just to keep them nice and tight. It was super helpful having an extra set of hands here. It made putting this together a lot easier rather than trying to hold 3 pieces at once. With the cabinet done, I finished the area with some baseboard. I wanted to run some bead molding up the stairs, so I used my jigsaw to cut the baseboard profile on the end of it, and then cleaned it up with some sandpaper. And once again, this area is getting painted, so I caulked all the joints. Time for the part I find arduous. Gotta prime and paint everything. Those stair spindles took forever. With the main portion of this done, it's time to measure and try and sort out a new coat rack. So currently I'm just using a whole bunch of 3M hooks, and to get a better sense of what I wanted to do, I held some boards up to the space and then cut them to size. So I ended up wanting a 9-foot board up on the wall, and I actually only had 6-foot pieces. So I joined them together with a couple of pocket screws and glue. And I know that pocket screws and end grain is not really the best solution, but it's a pretty lightweight application, so I went for it anyways. So I just picked up this new DeWalt trim router and Bosch router bits, and it made really light work of putting this profile on the coat rack. The material is pine, but I was super happy with how well it worked. But after seeing the mess, it became clear that one of my next projects is definitely dust collection. So after getting the profile all routed and a little sanding done, I laid out all my hooks and started marking the layout. I picked up these hooks at Home Depot, and I just ended up roughly centering them vertically. And then for spacing, it ended up being about 10 inches apart. To try and make my life easier after paint, I decided to pre-drill all the holes before the painting. For paint, I did a quick coat of primer and then 2 coats of blue, and I ended up just using the same blue I used in my nursery just to save a little money on this project. If you want to see how my nursery build went, go check out that video. One more thing to paint for this coat rack, and that's these wooden buttons that are going to hide the hardware once it's up on the wall. To mark the holes and drill for the wall anchors, I used my ladder and a 2x4 and a couple of shims to get everything level and in position where I wanted it, and then just quickly tapped each hole with a drill bit to mark the concrete wall. I didn't have a hammer drill on hand, but my normal drill worked just fine. It just took a little longer. If you're tackling a project like this, you definitely can get away with it. Just make sure you got some good masonry bits. Don't forget to mark the depth so you don't have to do any more drilling than you need to. With the wall all prepped, I'm going to lay out my hardware and screw it all in place, which went nice and quick given that I pre-drilled all the holes. I ended up using 8 concrete wall anchors here, which I think is going to be more than fine for a couple of coats. The wooden plugs hide the hardware nicely, and I just covered them with a rag and tapped them lightly into place. And here's the final result. Final part of this mudroom makeover is going to be making a frame for this welcome sign that we got for our wedding. Having just practiced the miter cuts on the table saw a little while ago, these went really smoothly. Keeping things simple, I just glued and then taped the corners. This was a trick I learned watching some other YouTube videos, and I was pleasantly surprised with how well it worked. After getting everything all set, I just used a tape to make sure everything was still square. I waited a day for the glue to dry before removing the tape and then routing the profile on the back side of the frame to accept the welcome sign, and then a profile on the front to dress it up a little bit. Using the router again just reinforced my need for dust collection, so you're definitely going to see that in a future video. Time to route a profile on the outside of the frame. I opted to use the same one I used on the coat rack to try and tie the whole room together. Did the same thing I did in the coat rack, 1 coat of primer and 2 coats of the blue paint. I didn't have any figure 8 washers handy for attaching tabletops or desktops, that kind of thing, but I did have these tabs for mounting electrical boxes handy, so I used those instead. The last thing I did to protect the wall is I just put on these little rubber bumpers. And finally, time for the age-old struggle of trying to line up the nail. But I think it all came together and worked out pretty good. I've got plenty more projects down here, including redoing those stairs, but I think this is a pretty good start. So I'm really happy with the progress I've made so far. I've got some other things I need to do in the basement, like the stairs and do a little more painting on the trim, but hopefully you found this project helpful or inspiring in some way so you can work on your own project. And if you liked it, leave me a comment or subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. Thanks, guys.